Dad, I've got some bad news. Marcus's voice cut through the terminal noise at SeaTac like a chainsaw through plywood. I stopped walking, my fishing gear bag hitting my leg, and stared at my 32-year-old son standing there with that look I'd seen too many times before. My name's Carlos Rodriguez, but everyone calls me Tank. I'm 58 years old, and I should have known right then that the kid was about to screw me over again. We were standing in front of the Alaska Airlines check-in counter in Terminal C, and I could see families all around us with their outdoor gear, excited about their Alaskan adventures. Kids bouncing around with fishing poles, dads checking their tackle boxes one last time, mothers organizing snacks for the flight. Everything I'd been dreaming about for 6 months, ever since the doc told me my heart might not handle too many more of these wilderness trips. "What kind of bad news?" I asked, though something in his tone already made my stomach drop like a stone in deep water. He wouldn't look me straight in the eye, just kept checking his phone like he was expecting some important call, the kind of nervous energy he'd had since he was a kid getting caught in a lie. "I forgot to book your ticket." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Around us, people were checking in with boarding passes clutched in their hands, talking about fishing charters and wildlife tours, planning which restaurants they'd hit in Anchorage, all the stuff Marcus and I had been planning during our Sunday dinners at my place for months. "You forgot?" My voice came out rougher than I meant it to. "Marcus, we've been planning this trip since last spring. I gave you $35,000 to handle everything." I know. He finally looked at me, but just for a second, before his eyes darted away again. There was just so much to coordinate with the lodge and Jessica's work schedule. Things got mixed up. $35,000. Let me tell you something about that money. I didn't just pull it out of my back pocket like some trust fund kid. After my heart attack scare last March, chest pains that had me in the ER thinking I was done for, I worked double shifts at the Boeing Everett plant for 6 months straight, overtime every weekend, extra projects during the week, all so I could save up for this trip. This wasn't just some vacation we were talking about. This was supposed to be our father-son bonding trip, the kind my old man took me on when I was Marcus's age, back in 1983 when men still did that kind of thing. My dad, Antonio Rodriguez, had saved for 2 years to take me salmon fishing in British Columbia. 3 days of just him and me, teaching me how to read the water, how to handle a big Chinook when it runs. Best memories I had of the man before he passed. I wanted that with Marcus, wanted to pass down what my father taught me, show him that there's more to life than his sales job and Jessica's constant shopping trips to Bellevue Square. I was already heading toward the counter, dragging my gear behind me. This had to be fixable. Had to be. Some computer glitch, maybe a name spelled wrong in the system. "Excuse me," I called to the woman behind the Alaska Airlines desk. She was probably in her 40s, professional smile, the kind of person who deals with travel problems all day long and has seen every sob story in the book. "Certainly, sir. How can I help you? I need to check on flights to Anchorage today. There might be an issue with my booking." She started typing, her fingers flying over the keyboard with practiced efficiency. "What's the name on the reservation?" "Rodriguez. Carlos Rodriguez. But there might be a problem with how it was booked." More typing. I watched her screen reflected in her glasses, seeing scrolling lists of names and flight numbers. Her professional smile started to fade as she searched. "I'm not seeing any reservation under that name, sir. Are you sure it was booked with Alaska Airlines?" My chest got tight. Not the heart attack kind of tight, but close. The kind of tightness you get when you're starting to realize that something's very wrong and you're not going to like where this is heading. It has to be there. My son and his family should have tickets on the same flight. "Let me check under your son's name then." Her fingers moved across the keyboard again. "What dates were you looking to travel?" "Today. Right now. Flight 447 to Anchorage, departing at 3:20 p.m. She nodded, kept typing, and I could see the screen reflected in her glasses as she scrolled through whatever system they use to track reservations. "I do see a reservation for Marcus Rodriguez. Party of 2, departing at 3:20 p.m. today. Party of 2. Not 3. Not father and son and daughter-in-law. Just 2. The terminal started to feel like it was spinning around me. People were still moving past us with their luggage, but everything seemed to slow down like I was watching it all through thick glass. "That's impossible," I said, my voice sounding hollow in my own ears. "Check again. Maybe it's under a different first name, or maybe there's a separate reservation." "I've checked twice, sir. The reservation shows Marcus Rodriguez and Jessica Rodriguez. 2 passengers total, 2 passengers, Marcus and Jessica. No Carlos, no Tank, no father who'd worked double shifts for 6 months to make this dream happen. "Would you like me to see what's available on standby?" the airline agent asked, her voice gentle, like she was talking to someone who'd just received bad news from a doctor. Hope flickered for about half a second. "Yes, anything. I'll pay whatever it costs." She kept typing, her expression getting more sympathetic by the minute. "I'm sorry, but we're completely booked today. There's a fishing convention in Anchorage and it's peak season for tourism. What about tomorrow?" "First class, coach, I don't care. Let me check." More typing, more scrolling. "First class is available tomorrow, but it's quite expensive for a last-minute booking." "How expensive?" $2,800. I reached for my wallet. But Marcus grabbed my arm hard enough to leave fingerprints. "Dad, we need to talk." I shook him off, probably harder than I should have. "Not now. We're fixing this." "No, we're not." His grip got tighter, and he pulled me away from the counter like I was some confused old man wandering around the airport. "This isn't going to work." The airline lady watched us with that concerned look people get when they're witnessing a family meltdown in public. A couple of other passengers started staring. Some kid pointed at my fishing gear that had fallen over when Marcus grabbed me, tackle box spilling open and showing off the new lures I'd bought specifically for Alaska salmon. "What do you mean it's not going to work?" I picked up my stuff, my hands shaking a little from anger or shock or both. "There's got to be another airline, another flight. Dad, listen to me." Marcus's voice had this edge I'd never heard before, like he was talking to an employee he was about to fire. "The trip is happening today, right now. Jessica and I are already checked in, and we're not missing our flight." Wait a minute. Something about the way he said that. "Jessica's going? I thought this was supposed to be our trip. Father and son." "Well, yeah, she's always wanted to see Alaska, and the lodge had space for 2 people. 2 people. My brain was trying to process what he was telling me, but it felt like trying to understand a foreign language. This whole time, while we'd been planning what I thought was a father-son fishing trip, Marcus had been planning a romantic getaway with his wife, using my money. "Marcus, this was supposed to be like when Grandpa Antonio took me fishing. Remember? I told you that story 100 times. 3 days with just him and me, learning how to be a man. Things change, Dad." The departure board flickered above us, updating flight times. The 3:20 Alaska flight now showed final boarding in red letters that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. "Marcus, you're scaring me here. What's really going on?" He checked his phone again, more nervous now, like someone was timing him. "What's going on is you need to go home, Dad. You're too old for this wilderness stuff anyway. Too old." The words hung in the air like exhaust fumes from a diesel truck. Around us, travelers kept moving with their boarding passes, heading off to their adventures together, real families who actually wanted to spend time with each other. And here I was getting told by my own son that I was too old to go on the trip I'd paid for. Too old? My voice cracked like I was 13 again. "I'm 58, not 88. I spent 4 years in the Navy, worked 30 years building airplanes. I think I can handle a fishing lodge. And we appreciate everything you've done, we really do. But standing here arguing isn't helping anyone." That's when I saw it in his eyes. Not panic about a forgotten ticket. Not guilt about screwing up the reservations. Relief. Like he'd been planning this moment all along, and now he just wanted to get it over with so he could go enjoy his vacation. "Just go home," he said, already backing toward the security checkpoint. "We'll call you from Alaska. Maybe bring you back a salmon or something." A salmon. Like I was a dog who'd be happy with table scraps. "Marcus, wait." I tried to follow him, but he was moving fast now, Jessica appearing at his side from wherever she'd been hiding during this conversation. She gave me a little wave, like we were saying goodbye after Sunday dinner instead of me getting abandoned at an airport. "Sorry, Tank," she called over her shoulder. "Emergency came up." "You understand?" No, I didn't understand. I stood there watching my son and daughter-in-law disappear into the security line, watching them show their boarding passes to the TSA agent, watching them head toward the gate for their Alaska adventure. The adventure I'd paid for. The adventure that was supposed to be about me teaching my son the things my father taught me. The Alaska Airlines counter felt like my only anchor in a world that had suddenly stopped making sense. I walked back to the same agent and she recognized me right away. "Sir, were you able to work things out with your family? Actually, I need you to check something for me." My voice sounded steadier than I felt, probably because 30 years of dealing with Boeing supervisors had taught me how to keep my cool when everything was falling apart. "That reservation under Marcus Rodriguez, when was it booked?" She hesitated, looking toward security where Marcus had vanished. "I'm not supposed to share booking details, but you seem like you're having a difficult day." Her fingers moved over the keyboard. "It shows here that it was booked 8 weeks ago. Party of 2. 2 adults. 8 weeks ago. Not 6 months when we'd first talked about the trip over Sunday dinner. Not last week when Marcus said he was finalizing all the details. 8 weeks ago when he'd already decided I wouldn't be part of my own vacation." "And were there any changes made to add additional passengers?" I asked, though I already knew what the answer would be. "No, sir. The reservation has remained unchanged since the original booking." My legs felt weak, like someone had just told me my ship was taking on water. I gripped the counter edge, the metal cool under my palms, trying to steady myself while my world tilted sideways. 8 weeks ago. While I was working those double shifts, coming home exhausted every night, telling Maria's picture on my nightstand about the great trip Marcus and I were going to take. While I was researching the best fishing techniques for Alaska salmon, watching YouTube videos about how to handle a 40-pound king when it makes its run. While I was lying in bed at night planning all the things I'd teach my son, all the stories I'd share about his grandfather Antonio. Marcus had been planning to cut me out the whole time. "What about other airlines?" I asked, though my voice sounded hollow now, like it was coming from someone else. "Anything to Anchorage today, tomorrow, this week?" She checked, and her expression got more sympathetic with each search. The kind of look you get from a nurse when the test results aren't good. "I'm afraid it's convention season." United has a waiting list of 89 people. Delta is booked solid through next Thursday. Next Thursday. By then, the trip would be half over. The fishing charter I'd specifically requested, the one that went after the big kings in deep water, would have come and gone. All those plans I'd made, all those dreams about finally connecting with my son the way my father connected with me, would be nothing but missed opportunities. The convention, right, the Alaska Fishing and Outdoor Convention that happens every October. I'd read about it in Field and Stream, how it brings thousands of people to Anchorage, how you have to book accommodations months in advance. Marcus knew about that convention. We'd talked about it. He'd made sure to book during the busiest week of the year, when there'd be no chance of me finding a last-minute alternative. This wasn't just betrayal. This was premeditated betrayal. "There is one option," the agent offered quietly, like she was throwing me a life preserver. "We have a red-eye tonight with one stop in Portland. Gets you there Friday morning, but it's quite expensive." "How expensive?" $20,800. I started to reach for my credit card, my hand moving automatically toward my wallet. Then I stopped. In the distance, I could see the gate for the Alaska flight. Through the big windows, I could make out Marcus and Jessica in the boarding area, probably texting friends about their amazing Alaskan adventure. The problem, me, had been handled, disposed of, filed away. "Sir?" The agent's voice seemed to come from far away. "He knew," I said, more to myself than to her. "All along he knew. I'm sorry?" I looked at her kind face, her genuine concern for a confused old guy who'd just been played by his own family, and suddenly felt embarrassed. This wasn't her problem. This was family business, the ugly kind that should stay behind closed doors where decent people don't have to witness it. "The flight," I said. "Is it still boarding?" "Final call was 10 minutes ago. They're probably closing the doors now." Right on cue, an announcement crackled over the intercom. "Alaska Airlines Flight 447 to Anchorage is now closed for boarding. All ticketed passengers should be on board." I turned toward the gate. Even from here, I could see a few stragglers rushing down the corridor with their carry-on bags bouncing behind them. Families heading to Alaska together, fathers and sons, mothers and daughters, people who actually wanted to spend time with each other instead of figuring out how to screw each other over. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text message. I pulled it out, hoping for a second that maybe Marcus had realized what he'd done. Maybe he was trying to fix this somehow. "Sorry, Dad, emergency came up. We'll call from the lodge. Take care of yourself. Take care of yourself." Like I was some burden he'd finally managed to dump at the curb on garbage day. The agent cleared her throat gently. About that evening flight, sir. Would you like me to hold it while you decide? I stared at my phone screen, reading Marcus's message again. No real explanation, no actual apology, just a casual brush-off after taking $35,000 and 6 months of my excitement about reconnecting with my son. About teaching him the things that matter. About being the kind of father my dad was to me. Emergency came up. What emergency? The emergency of not wanting your old man around while you and your wife play house in Alaska on his dime? No, I said, sliding the phone back into my pocket. No, I don't think so. Are you sure? I can hold it for 15 minutes. I'm sure. Because standing there in that terminal, with the smell of airport coffee and the sound of rolling luggage all around me, I realized something important. This wasn't about a forgotten ticket or poor planning or even Marcus being selfish. This was about who they thought I was, who they thought they could treat like a fool. The departure board updated again. Alaska Flight 447 now showed departed in stark black letters. Marcus and Jessica were airborne, probably already getting served those little bags of pretzels and complimentary soft drinks, congratulating themselves on how smoothly they'd handled the situation. But they'd made a calculation about Carlos Tank Rodriguez. They figured I'd quietly go home, maybe complain a little to my neighbor or my old Boeing buddies, but ultimately accept being thrown away like a broken wrench. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I picked up my gear bag and started walking toward the exit, each step taking me further away from the gate where my son had just disappeared with my money and my dreams. But I wasn't defeated. Not by a long shot. Every step away from that departure lounge was a step toward clarity, toward understanding exactly what I was dealing with. The taxi line stretched longer than I'd expected, but I welcomed the wait. Gave me time to think, to let the pieces settle into place like metal shavings around a magnet. Behind me, SeaTac hummed with its usual chaos. Families reuniting, business travelers checking phones, everyone moving with purpose toward their destinations. I had a destination too. It just wasn't the one I'd planned this morning. Where to? The driver asked as I loaded my gear into his trunk. Middle-aged guy, looked tired, probably dealing with airport traffic all day long. The kind of working man I'd spent 30 years alongside at Boeing. Ballard, up near the locks. I settled into the back seat, still holding my phone where Marcus's pathetic text message glowed like a neon sign advertising his betrayal. As we pulled away from SeaTac, I stared out at the familiar landscape of South Seattle. The industrial areas where I'd worked for 3 decades, the neighborhoods where other families were probably sitting down to dinner together, making plans that actually included each other instead of figuring out how to exclude their own fathers. Rough day? The driver asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. I wasn't usually one for talking to strangers, but something about the privacy of that taxi, the anonymity of confessing to someone I'd never see again, made it easier. Ever have your family turn on you? He laughed, but not with humor. The bitter kind of laugh you hear in factory break rooms when someone's talking about their divorce lawyer. Brother, I got an ex-wife who's been planning my funeral for 15 years. Family's the ones who know exactly where to stick the knife. The knife. That's exactly what it felt like. Sharp, precise, and aimed right at the place where it would do the most damage. As we drove through the Burien area, I started thinking back over the past few months. All those Sunday dinners at my place, Marcus showing up with Jessica, both of them talking about how excited they were for Alaska, how it was going to be such a great bonding experience, how much it meant to them that I was making it possible. Me picking up the tab every time we went to Red Robin or Olive Garden, me transferring money for deposits and equipment and reservations. Always happy to help, always believing that I was investing in my relationship with my son. But now, looking back with clear eyes instead of hopeful ones, I could see the signs I'd missed. The way Marcus insisted on handling all the bookings himself. Don't worry about it, Dad. I've got connections in the travel industry. Jessica's comments about how older folks sometimes prefer different types of vacations. The subtle suggestions that maybe I should consider a less strenuous alternative. They'd been conditioning me all along, preparing me to accept being left behind. You know what the worst part is? I said to the driver's reflection. What's that? They thought I'd just take it, roll over and play dead like some old dog. You planning to prove them wrong? I watched the Space Needle come into view as we headed north through the city, its familiar outline sharp against the October sky. Seattle, my city, the place where I'd built a life, raised a family, earned respect through honest work and keeping my word. I'm 58 years old, I told him. I worked 30 years at Boeing Building 777s, spent 4 years in the Navy before that. I raised a son who apparently thinks I'm some kind of pushover, but I didn't survive this long by letting people walk all over me. The driver chuckled, the sound carrying approval. Now you're talking sense. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Jessica. So sorry about the mix-up, Tank. We'll bring you back something nice from Alaska. Mix-up. Like it was some clerical error instead of a deliberate setup. Something nice from Alaska. Probably a refrigerator magnet or a coffee mug with a cartoon salmon on it. The kind of cheap souvenir you buy for people you don't really care about but feel obligated to remember. I thought about the $35,000 I'd transferred to Marcus's account 8 weeks ago. Money I'd earned working overtime shifts that left me so tired I could barely keep my eyes open during the drive home. Sacrificing weekends, missing Seahawks games, all so I could afford this one perfect experience with my son. Money I'd transferred without question, without asking for receipts or documentation, because you're supposed to be able to trust family. Because when your son looks you in the eye and says he needs help making your dream come true, you don't ask to see the paperwork. How easily I'd been played. How completely I'd trusted him. But as we exited onto 15th Avenue, heading toward my house in Ballard, something shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, sharp and fresh like a new cut. But underneath it was something harder, something that had been building pressure like steam in a boiler ever since Marcus had grabbed my arm and told me I was too old for wilderness adventures. They wanted to treat me like some doddering old man who could be discarded when convenient. They wanted to take my money and exclude me from my own family vacation, then send me a postcard and expect me to be grateful. Fine. But they were about to discover that this particular old man still had a few tricks up his sleeve. The taxi pulled into my driveway as the sun started to set behind the Olympic Mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that Maria used to love. The house looked exactly as I'd left it 4 hours ago, neat, quiet, ready for a week's absence. But I wasn't the same man who'd locked that front door with excitement and anticipation this morning. That'll be $67, the driver said. I handed him $80. Keep the change. And thanks for the conversation. Whatever you're planning, he said with a grin that told me he'd been in similar situations himself. I hope they deserve it. As I watched his taillights disappear down the street, I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a number I hadn't called in months. Tom McKenzie, my lawyer, the guy who'd helped me with Maria's estate when she passed, who'd made sure everything was handled properly and legally. If Marcus wanted to play games with $35,000, we could play games. But first, I had some research to do. The key turned in my front door with the same familiar click as always, but everything felt different now. I dragged my gear across the threshold, the wheels catching on the doormat Maria had bought 25 years ago when we'd first moved to this house. Home, where I'd planned to be packing for Alaska tonight instead of unpacking from nowhere. I changed into my comfortable Seahawks sweatshirt and old jeans, the kind Marcus always said made me look like a stereotypical dad. Tonight, that felt appropriate. I had dad business to take care of, the kind that required thinking like an engineer instead of feeling like a victim. My office sat exactly as I'd left it this morning. Maria's old desk positioned by the window where she used to pay bills and plan our vacations. Filing cabinets lined up against the wall like soldiers at attention. Everything organized, everything in its place, unlike my family situation. The Alaska folder sat in the second drawer, labeled Father-Son Trip 2024 in my careful handwriting. I'd started that folder back in March, right after the heart attack scare when the doctor told me I needed to think about what really mattered in life. I pulled it out and spread the contents across the desk's oak surface. 17 documents, each one representing another piece of my trust that had been systematically betrayed. Bank statement showing $35,000 transferred to Marcus's account on August 20th. I remembered that day clearly. Marcus had called, all excited about locking in the early booking discount at some exclusive lodge. "Dad, you're going to love this place," he'd said. "It's exactly what you always talked about. Real Alaska, like Grandpa Antonio showed you. Lodge confirmation for Midnight Sun Adventure Lodge. Deluxe cabin, 7 nights, guided fishing package for 3 guests. I counted the names listed: Marcus Rodriguez, Jessica Rodriguez, and Jake Patterson. Jake Patterson. Marcus's drinking buddy from work. The guy who'd been laid off from Microsoft 6 months ago and had been mooching off friends ever since. They'd put his name down instead of mine. The trip my money paid for didn't even include me. It included Marcus's unemployed buddy who couldn't even afford his own beer, let alone an Alaska fishing trip. My hands shook as I reached for the lodge brochure. Beautiful photos of guys holding massive salmon, fathers and sons by alpine lakes. 3 generations of men sharing the wilderness experience. All the things I'd dreamed about doing with Marcus. All the stories I'd planned to tell him about his grandfather, about the lessons you can only learn when it's just men and nature, and the challenge of landing something bigger than yourself. "Dad, you're going to love the guide service," Marcus had told me during one of our planning dinners. "They guarantee we'll get into the big kings. The guide's been working those waters for 20 years. All lies, every single word." I picked up the phone. Not my cell, but the old landline Maria had insisted we keep. Something about this moment required the weight of a real connection, the gravity of conducting serious business on serious equipment. Directory assistants connected me to Midnight Sun Adventure Lodge in Alaska. The phone rang 3 times before someone picked up. "Midnight Sun Lodge, this is Randy speaking. How can I help you?" His voice had that authentic Alaska sound. Gruff, no nonsense, probably spent his whole life in the wilderness dealing with city folks who thought they were tougher than they actually were. "I need to cancel a reservation under the name Rodriguez." Let me pull that up for you. "Rodriguez, yeah, I got it right here. Party of 3, checking in tomorrow. Deluxe cabin, guided fishing package. You sure you want to cancel? Weather's looking perfect this week, and the Kings are running strong. Perfect weather, big fish running. Everything I dreamed about for months, I'm completely sure." A pause. I could hear him typing, probably wondering why someone would cancel such an expensive booking at the last minute. "Mr. Rodriguez, I gotta tell you, canceling this close to arrival means you forfeit your full deposit. We're talking about $8,000 here. $8,000. Less than what I'd spend on a decent used truck. Money that Marcus and his friends would lose because of their greed and betrayal. That's acceptable. You sure about this? This is a substantial reservation. Maybe if you talk to our manager, we could work something out. Partial refund, reschedule for next season? Cancel it. Right now. Tonight." More typing. The sound of a printer in the background. Official business being conducted. "Okay, it's processed. Cancellation confirmed at 6:47 p.m. Pacific Time on October 15th. You should receive email confirmation within the hour." Perfect. Marcus would know exactly when I'd taken action. More importantly, he'd know it was deliberate, calculated, and final. "One more thing," I said. "When someone shows up tomorrow expecting that reservation, what exactly will you tell them?" "I'll tell them the reservation was canceled by the primary booking party. That's you, Mr. Rodriguez, at 6:47 p.m. Pacific Time yesterday. Thank you, Randy. You've been very helpful." I hung up the phone and sat back in Maria's old chair, looking at the scattered papers on my desk. In the corner sat a framed photo from last Christmas. Marcus, Jessica, and me around my tree, opening presents I'd bought, eating the prime rib dinner I'd paid to have catered from that fancy place in Bellevue. All of them smiling at the generous old fool who never asked questions when they needed money. Well, the generous part was over. The fool part, too. I gathered up all the Alaska documents and put them back in the folder, but I kept out one piece of paper. The bank statement showing that $35,000 transfer. August 20th, 2024. I remembered that day like it was yesterday because it was the same day I'd gotten the all clear from my cardiologist after 3 months of tests following my heart episode. Dr. Patel had looked at my EKG results and said, "Carlos, your heart is strong. You've got many good years ahead of you, but don't waste them. Don't waste them." I'd walked out of that medical center feeling like I'd been given a second chance. Like maybe it was time to focus on what really mattered: family, relationships, passing down the things my father had taught me. That same afternoon, Marcus had called about the Alaska trip, and I'd transferred the money without hesitation. Funny how life works sometimes. The day I thought I was investing in my future with my son was actually the day he was finalizing plans to cut me out of it. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. For the first time since we'd started planning this trip, I wasn't lying awake thinking about packing lists or weather reports or whether I'd remembered to bring extra leader line for the fishing rigs. Just deep, dreamless sleep, the kind you get when you finally stopped pretending everything is okay and started dealing with reality. Morning came with typical Seattle drizzle, the kind of October weather that makes you appreciate indoor heating and hot coffee. I made my usual breakfast, eggs over easy, wheat toast, black coffee, and sat at my kitchen table reading the Seattle Times like any other Friday. My phone was charging on the counter where I'd left it, and I could see the screen lighting up every few minutes with notifications. I finished my eggs and toast before checking the messages. 23 missed calls, all from Alaska area codes. The call log told a better story than any detective novel. First call at 1:47 a.m. Alaska time, then 2:15, then 2:33. Every 20 minutes through the night, like clockwork. Marcus had been awake all night. Between the calls were text messages, and I scrolled through them watching panic escalate in real time. Dad, call me back. Lodge says you canceled everything. Dad, this isn't funny. Call now. We're stuck in Anchorage with nowhere to go. Call me. This is serious. Jessica's crying. We have no place to stay. Jake thinks you've lost your mind. Fix this now. The timestamps painted a clear picture. The family had arrived in Anchorage around 2 p.m. Alaska time yesterday. Probably taken the shuttle to Midnight Sun Lodge, excited and tired from traveling, already planning their first day of fishing. They'd walked up to that beautiful log cabin reception desk, probably admiring the mounted salmon on the walls and the stone fireplace, and discovered they had no reservations, no rooms, no guides, no adventure. Just 3 people stranded in Alaska with maxed-out credit cards and nowhere to sleep except the airport. I carried my coffee to the living room and settled into my recliner by the window. Outside, my neighbor Mrs. Peterson was walking her golden retriever, the same route they took every morning for the past 8 years. Normal Friday routine for everyone else in the world. My phone rang. Alaska number. I let it go to voicemail, then played the message. Dad, I don't know what you think you're accomplishing, but you need to fix this right now. We spent the night in the Anchorage airport. Jessica hasn't stopped crying. Jake is furious and talking about flying home today. This is cruel and unnecessary and completely unlike you. Call me back and fix this mess immediately. Cruel and unnecessary. Interesting choice of words from someone who'd left his father stranded at SeaTac Airport just 24 hours earlier. Jake is furious. So Marcus's buddy was there, just like the reservation had shown. The unemployed guy who'd taken my place on my own trip, now complaining because his free vacation had been interrupted. The second message was from Jessica, her voice shaky like she'd actually been crying. Tank, I don't understand what's happening. Marcus says you canceled everything out of spite. Surely there's been some mistake. We're stuck here with no money for hotels. Please call us back. We can work this out. No money for hotels. Of course they didn't have money. They'd put everything on credit cards, expecting to pay them off with more handouts from the old man. The old man who was supposed to sit quietly at home while they enjoyed his Alaskan adventure. The third message was shorter. Marcus again. But his voice had changed. Less pleading, more threatening. Dad, when we get back to Seattle, we're going to have a serious conversation about this. You can't just manipulate people with money whenever you get your feelings hurt. There are going to be consequences. I played that one twice, making sure I heard it right. Manipulate people with money. Consequences. The coffee tasted perfect. Colombian blend, medium roast, ground fresh yesterday morning when I'd still believed in father-son bonding trips and teaching the next generation about respect and responsibility. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Marcus's Alaska number. My finger hovered over the call button for about 10 seconds. 24 hours ago, I would have called immediately, apologized for the confusion, tried to fix everything with more money and more accommodating behavior. But that was yesterday's Carlos Rodriguez. Today's version had learned something important about consequences. I pressed the call button. Marcus answered before the first ring finished, like he'd been sitting there staring at his phone waiting for my call. Dad, finally. What the hell is going on? The lodge says you canceled our entire reservation. His voice came through so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. In the background, I could hear Jessica saying something about complete disaster and Jake complaining about the crazy old man loud enough for me to hear every word. Well, hello to you too, Marcus. How's your Alaska adventure going? Don't play games with me. We have nowhere to stay. Do you understand what you've done? I reached for my notepad, the one Maria used to keep by the phone for taking messages when people called about Boeing business or neighborhood association meetings. Some conversations needed documentation, especially when threats were involved. Actually, I understand perfectly. Tell me, when you planned to leave me at SeaTac yesterday, where exactly did you expect me to spend my vacation? A pause. The background voices quieted, probably because Marcus was realizing that I wasn't calling to apologize and fix everything with my credit card. Dad, that was completely different. This is about innocent people getting hurt. Innocent people? Like Jake Patterson, who took my place on the trip I paid for? Another pause, longer this time. That's not... Look, Jake just happened to be available when we thought you couldn't make it. When you decided 8 weeks ago that I couldn't make it, you mean... The lodge told me when the reservation was booked, Marcus. August 20th. Party of 3. With Jake's name instead of mine. I could almost hear the gears turning as Marcus realized I'd done my homework, that this wasn't some confused old man having a tantrum, but someone who'd uncovered the truth about their planning. How did you... he started, then caught himself. The lodge has very detailed records. Midnight Sun Adventure Lodge, Randy the manager, very helpful guy. Told me all about your reservation, how it's been unchanged since the original booking, no modifications to add additional guests. Just you, Jessica, and Jake from day one. Marcus tried a different approach, his voice getting that reasonable tone he used when he was trying to sell someone something they didn't need. Dad, we can't afford to book another lodge. Everything's booked solid anyway because of the fishing convention. We put the whole trip on credit cards, expecting to pay them off with, well, expecting different circumstances. Expecting to pay them off with more of my money while I sat home like a piece of discarded furniture. You mean expecting to steal more money from your father while treating him like garbage? Don't be dramatic. This isn't about you anymore. It's about getting out of this mess. I wrote down the time on my notepad. 8:15 a.m. Pacific, 7:15 a.m. Alaska. Marcus's voice carried the exhaustion of someone who'd been awake all night dealing with consequences he'd never expected to face. Actually, it became about me the moment you took my $35,000 and gave my spot to Jake Patterson. How's Jake handling his free vacation, by the way? Look, Dad, Jake's been having a hard time since the Microsoft layoffs. We thought it would be good for him to get away, on my money, to my Alaska trip, in my place. You're making this sound worse than it is. Marcus, you planned for 8 weeks to exclude your father from a trip he paid for, then told him he was too old for wilderness adventures. How exactly could it be worse? His voice shifted then, getting harder, showing the side of him I'd been seeing more and more over the past few years. Fine. You want to play hardball? When we get back to Seattle, you're going to regret this little stunt. I wrote that down word for word. You're going to regret this. Marcus, are you threatening me? I'm promising you that actions have consequences, old man. Old man. I noted that too, right under the threat. You're absolutely right about consequences. For instance, the consequence of betraying someone's trust is that they stop trusting you. This is ridiculous. You're punishing innocent people because you got your feelings hurt. I'm teaching adults that stealing $35,000 and abandoning family members has repercussions. We didn't steal anything. You gave us that money for a family trip that excluded the family member who paid for it. That's an interesting definition of family, Marcus. Jake's voice got louder in the background. Tell him I'll pay him back when I get another job. This is bullshit. You hear that, Dad? Jake's willing to work this out. Jake's willing to pay me back for the vacation he stole? How generous of him. When exactly does he expect to find employment? Silence, except for Jessica's voice in the distance saying something about never should have listened and this is a disaster. Marcus tried one more approach, his voice getting desperate now. Dad, look, maybe we handled things badly yesterday, but right now we need to focus on fixing the situation. Can you call the lodge and restore the reservation? We'll figure out the other stuff when we get home. No. What do you mean, no? I mean the word no, Marcus. It's a complete sentence. It's also what you should have heard yesterday when you told me I was too old for wilderness adventures. This is insane. You're acting like some kind of vindictive... I hung up. The living room felt perfectly quiet after Marcus's shouting. Outside, a crow had landed on Maria's old bird feeder, its black wings gleaming in the morning drizzle. Smart birds, crows. They remember faces, hold grudges, teach their young which humans can be trusted and which ones can't. I looked at my notepad. Threats, insults, financial confessions, zero accountability. everything I needed for the next phase of my plan. My phone started ringing again immediately. Alaska number. I turned it off and finished my coffee, watching the crow navigate between the seeds with the kind of purpose and precision that comes from knowing exactly what you're after. Some lessons couldn't be taught with words. They had to be experienced firsthand. Time to call Tom Mackenzie. That afternoon, I made the call I'd been thinking about since Marcus first grabbed my arm at SeaTac. Tom Mackenzie's office, the lawyer who'd helped me navigate Maria's estate planning 3 years ago when everything felt impossible, and I didn't know how to handle life without her. Mackenzie Law Offices, this is Linda speaking. This is Carlos Rodriguez. I need to schedule an urgent consultation with Tom about updating my will. Linda's voice carried the professional efficiency of someone who'd scheduled plenty of urgent legal consultations. How does Monday afternoon work for you, Mr. Rodriguez? Tom has an opening at 2 p.m. Perfect. May I ask what type of estate planning you're looking to discuss? It helps Tom prepare for the meeting. I looked at my notepad where Marcus's threats were written in my careful handwriting. Disinheritance, protection from financial exploitation, and making sure my assets go to people who actually deserve them. A pause. I see. Tom will have the appropriate forms ready. Is there anything else you need to discuss? Bring everything related to proving mental competency. I have a feeling we're going to need ironclad documentation. Monday morning brought the kind of crisp October weather that makes you remember why people love the Pacific Northwest, despite all the rain. I dressed in my good slacks and the navy blazer Maria had bought me for her company Christmas parties, the kind of outfit that said serious business to anyone paying attention. Tom's office occupied the 15th floor of a glass building in downtown Seattle, all polished wood and expensive leather furniture, the kind of place that charged by the hour and delivered results worth every penny. Through the windows you could see Elliott Bay stretching out toward the Olympic Mountains, ferries moving back and forth like toys in a bathtub. Carlos, come in. Tom stood to greet me, his handshake firm and professional. At 45, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd spent years solving other people's complicated problems. Linda mentioned you're looking at estate planning changes. What's the situation? I settled into the leather chair across from his mahogany desk and spread out my documentation like evidence in a criminal trial. Bank statements, receipts, text messages, notes from phone calls. Everything organized the way we used to organize technical specs at Boeing. Methodical, thorough, designed to tell a story that couldn't be argued with. My son has shown me who he really is. I need legal protection from his greed. The story came out chronologically, like a project briefing. The planned Alaska trip, Marcus's deliberate exclusion at the airport, the lodge cancellation, 23 desperate phone calls, and finally those ugly threats when he realized I wouldn't be manipulated anymore. Tom took notes in a legal pad, occasionally asking clarifying questions that showed he'd handled plenty of family disputes, the kind of questions that cut through emotion and got to the facts that would matter in court. How long has this financial dependency been going on? 15 years minimum. I have documentation going back to his first apartment deposit when he was 22. Tom's eyebrows went up slightly. We're talking about substantial amounts over time? I pulled out a summary I'd prepared over the weekend, totaling up 15 years of help with rent, car payments, credit card debt, medical bills, and various emergencies that always seemed to require immediate cash infusions. $847,000. That's what I've given him since 2009. Tom whistled softly. That's well into inheritance-level money. And the threats were specific? He continued. I slid my notepad across his desk, open to the page where I'd written down Marcus's exact words. You're going to regret this, old man. Actions have consequences. Tom studied the notes, his expression growing more serious as he read. Carlos, this sounds like attempted financial coercion. In Washington state, that's solid grounds for disinheritance with legal protection against challenges. The relief felt physical, like setting down a weight I'd been carrying without realizing how heavy it had become. I want him completely excluded, I said. Everything I've built goes to organizations that will actually use it for good. Tom opened his computer and pulled up estate planning templates. Let me walk you through the options. We can establish a new will with charitable beneficiaries, including specific language about why Marcus is excluded. The documentation you've provided gives us multiple grounds: financial exploitation, elder abuse, threatening behavior. For the next hour, we discussed details that would have made Maria proud. The Veterans Administration would receive the largest portion of my estate, $400,000 to help guys coming back from overseas deployments who were struggling with PTSD and finding work. Boeing retiree assistance programs would get $200,000 to help guys like me who'd given their best years to the company and needed help with medical bills or housing. Local youth fishing programs would receive $150,000, teaching kids from tough neighborhoods how to cast a line and find something positive to focus on instead of getting into trouble. Community development programs, senior services, organizations run by people who understood that money comes with responsibility, not entitlement. The documentation you've provided shows a clear pattern of financial exploitation, Tom said, reviewing my bank statements and the timeline of Marcus's betrayal. Combined with the threatening language and premeditated exclusion from the Alaska trip, we have ironclad grounds for disinheritance. How long will this take? I can have documents ready for signature by Friday. We'll need witnesses, notarization, and I'd recommend a video recording of the signing to document your mental competency and free will. Whatever it takes. Tom leaned back in his chair, studying me with the careful attention of someone making sure his client understood the full implications of what they were proposing. Carlos, this is permanent. Once executed, this will fundamentally change your family relationships. There's no going back from something like this. I thought about Marcus's voice on the phone, calling me old man like it was an insult. About Jake Patterson sleeping in Alaska lodges on my dime while I sat home feeling like a fool. About Jessica's fake tears and manipulative text messages. They changed the relationship first, I said. I'm just making it official. Friday afternoon, Tom called with the news I'd been waiting for. The documents are ready, Carlos. Can you come in Monday morning for the signing? I'd like to schedule it early, around 9 a.m. when everyone's fresh and focused. Absolutely. Just to confirm, you're still committed to these changes? No second thoughts over the weekend? I looked around my living room at the family photos lining the mantelpiece. Marcus's high school graduation, his wedding to Jessica, Christmas mornings when he still seemed to enjoy spending time with his old man. They were good memories, but they belonged to a different person, the person Marcus used to be before he decided I was just a wallet with legs. More committed than ever. Good. I'll have Mrs. Patterson and Danny Rodriguez as witnesses. No relation to you despite the name. We'll video record everything to prevent any future challenges about your mental state or free will. That weekend, I spent my time getting my affairs in order. Cleaned out closets, organized paperwork, updated my address book with current information for all the charitable organizations that would soon be receiving substantial donations. It felt good, productive, like preparing for a deployment when I was in the Navy, making sure everything was squared away before heading into unknown territory. Sunday evening, Marcus called. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to his message. Dad, we're flying home tomorrow afternoon. I think we need to sit down and have a serious conversation about what happened this week. Jessica and I have been talking, and we're willing to work something out. Maybe we can find a way to reschedule the Alaska trip for next year. Include you properly this time. But this childish behavior has to stop. You can't just throw tantrums every time you don't get your way. Call me back so we can discuss this like adults. Childish behavior. Tantrums, like I was some spoiled kid instead of a 58-year-old man who'd worked his whole life and deserved basic respect from his own son. I deleted the message without calling back. Monday morning found me back in Tom's downtown office, but this time the conference room held additional people. Mrs. Patterson, Tom's secretary, sat at the polished table with notary stamps and official forms arranged like surgical instruments. Danny Rodriguez, the paralegal, had set up a video camera on a tripod, its red light blinking steadily as it recorded everything. This is a formal will execution, Tom explained, settling into his chair with the gravity of someone conducting official business. Everything needs to be witnessed and notarized to prevent future challenges. The new will lay open before me. 31 pages of legal language that translated my anger and disappointment into permanent consequences. Page after page detailed the complete exclusion of Marcus Rodriguez from any inheritance, the establishment of charitable trusts, the designation of Tom as executor with full authority to distribute assets according to my exact specifications. Let me read the key provisions aloud for the record, Tom said, his voice carrying the weight of legal ceremony. The testator, Carlos Rodriguez, being of sound mind and clear judgment, hereby completely excludes his son, Marcus Rodriguez, from all inheritance due to demonstrated financial exploitation, elder abuse, and threatening behavior toward the testator. The words felt powerful sitting there in that conference room, with the Seattle skyline visible through the windows and 3 legal professionals ensuring everything was done correctly. Furthermore, Tom continued, the testator designates the following charitable organizations as primary beneficiaries of his estate, valued at approximately $950,000. We went through the list we'd carefully constructed, the Veterans Administration receiving $400,000 for PTSD counseling and job placement programs, Boeing retiree assistance getting $200,000 for medical support and housing assistance, youth fishing programs receiving $150,000 to teach kids from disadvantaged backgrounds about responsibility and patience, senior services, community development, food banks, organizations run by grateful people who understood that money comes with obligations, not just opportunities. Mrs. Patterson adjusted her glasses and looked directly at me. Mr. Rodriguez, do you understand these provisions completely? Yes, I do. And you're executing this will freely without any coercion or pressure from anyone? Completely freely. This is my decision, based on my son's actions and threats. Danny stepped forward with the video camera focused on my face. For the record, please state your full name and today's date. Carlos Antonio Rodriguez, October 28, 2024. And you're executing this will of your own free choice, understanding that it permanently excludes your son Marcus from any inheritance? I am. My son has shown me through his actions that he views me as nothing more than a source of money to be exploited. He planned for months to exclude me from a trip I paid for, then threatened me when I objected. He's received nearly $850,000 from me over the past 15 years and has never shown anything but entitlement and disrespect in return. My signature felt steady on the official documents, each letter deliberate and final. Mrs. Patterson and Danny signed as witnesses, their presence ensuring that no future court could question the validity of my decisions or claim I'd been mentally incompetent. The notary seal pressed into the paper with satisfying authority, making everything official under Washington state law. The sound echoed in the conference room like a judge's gavel, final and irreversible. The original will remains in our security vault, Tom said, handing me sealed copies in a manila envelope. These are your personal records. I recommend keeping one copy accessible and another in your safety deposit box at the bank. When do you think they'll find out about this? That depends entirely on when you choose to tell them. I tucked the envelope under my arm, feeling its weight like armor against future manipulation and threats. Marcus's flight was scheduled to land at SeaTac this afternoon. He'd probably want to schedule that serious conversation he'd mentioned in his voicemail, expecting me to apologize for inconveniencing him and restore his access to my bank account. Perfect. I had something to tell him too. 3 days had passed since Tom sealed the final documents in his vault. During that time, I'd maintained my peaceful routine while mentally preparing for this moment. Tom and I had confirmed Marcus's flight details, discussed timing, and prepared for what was coming. Alaska Airlines Flight 447 from Anchorage, arriving at SeaTac at 3:45 p.m. on Thursday. Now, standing beside Tom in the international arrivals area, I felt the same calm confidence that had carried me through every major decision of my 30-year career at Boeing. The same focus I'd used when troubleshooting complex aircraft systems, when one mistake could ground a $200 million airplane. Flight 447 from Anchorage has landed, Tom said quietly, checking his phone. They'll be coming through customs and baggage claims shortly. The leather portfolio under his arm contained the documents that would complete our mission. A week of planning, legal preparation, and psychological readiness, all leading to this moment in SeaTac's arrivals hall. Passengers began emerging through the sliding doors marked "Nothing to Declare." Tired families with Alaska souvenirs, couples carrying duty-free shopping bags, business travelers checking their phones. The usual flow of people returning from vacations, most of them probably having better experiences than my son had just endured. Then I saw them. Jessica appeared first, looking exhausted and stressed, dragging an oversized suitcase covered with Alaska Airlines baggage tags. Her usual put-together appearance was gone, no makeup, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, the kind of look you get from sleeping in airport chairs and dealing with a week of crisis management. Behind her came Jake Patterson, Marcus's unemployed buddy, looking around nervously like someone who knew they were in trouble but wasn't sure how much. He'd traded his usual Microsoft hoodie for an Alaska souvenir t-shirt that probably cost more than he could afford, even with my money funding his vacation. Marcus emerged last, checking his phone with the distracted air of someone trying to reconnect with mainland reality. He looked older somehow, like the week in Alaska had aged him. The confident swagger he'd shown at the airport a week ago was gone, replaced by the hunched shoulders of someone who'd spent 7 days dealing with consequences he'd never expected to face. Then Jake spotted me standing there with Tom. "Oh shit," he said, loud enough for other passengers to hear. Marcus's head snapped up, and his face went pale when he saw me beside a man in an expensive suit carrying official-looking documents. His eyes moved from me to Tom, taking in my lawyer's professional attire and the portfolio tucked under his arm. "Dad," Marcus's voice carried exhaustion and wariness in equal measure. "What are you doing here? Who's this?" "Welcoming you home," I said calmly. "How was your Alaska adventure?" Jessica appeared at Marcus's elbow, her expression shifting from confusion to something approaching alarm as she noticed Tom's presence and the formal way he was standing there like someone conducting official business. "Tank, what's going on? Who is this person?" Tom stepped forward with the precise movement of someone who'd served legal papers before. "Mr. Marcus Rodriguez?" Marcus's face went completely white beneath what looked like a decent tan from his week outdoors. Tom extended the sealed manila envelope toward Marcus with the formal gravity of a court officer serving a summons. "Mr. Marcus Rodriguez, this is a copy of your father's revised last will and testament, executed on October 28, 2024. Marcus's hands trembled as he accepted the envelope. The airport noise, announcements, luggage wheels, conversations seemed to fade into background static as everyone's attention focused on the legal document that was about to change everything. "What is this?" Jessica whispered, reading the return address on the envelope with growing horror. Marcus broke the seal with jerky movements. His Alaska relaxation completely evaporated. He unfolded the papers and began scanning the contents, his eyes moving rapidly across the legal text that spelled out his permanent exclusion from any inheritance. I watched his face transform as comprehension dawned. First confusion, then disbelief, then something approaching horror as he reached the crucial passages about complete disinheritance and the charitable beneficiaries who would receive everything he'd expected to inherit. "This can't be real," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Jessica leaned over his shoulder, reading the same devastating words. Her face drained of all color as she processed the implications of what she was seeing. Jake tried to fade into the background, but there wasn't anywhere to go in the crowded terminal. "Tank," Jessica said, trying to maintain a reasonable tone despite the panic in her eyes. "Surely we can work this out. Think about the future, about grandchildren someday." "I did think about future generations," I replied calmly. "That's why I'm funding youth programs and veteran assistance instead of enabling financial parasites." Marcus's head snapped up from the documents, his eyes blazing with the kind of desperate fury that comes from watching a life plan collapse in real time. "You can't do this to us. I'm your son." "Yes," I said, "the son who excluded me from my own trip, threatened me when I objected, and spent 15 years treating me like a personal bank account. This is impossible. You can't disinherit family. There are laws." Tom spoke with professional calm. "Actually, Mr. Rodriguez, Washington state probate law fully supports your father's right to distribute his estate as he sees fit. The documentation is legally ironclad. I'll contest it in court." Marcus's voice rose enough to attract glances from other travelers. "This won't stand. Please do," I said. Tom has prepared for that possibility. The video recording of my competency evaluation should be particularly compelling to any judge. Marcus crumpled the papers in his fist, then immediately smoothed them out again, as if that might change their contents. "This is insane. You're throwing away your family over one stupid argument. One stupid argument." My voice remained level, but I felt Maria's spirit strengthening my resolve. "Marcus, you stole from me, lied to me, and threatened me. That's not an argument. That's betrayal." The family stood clustered around their Alaska luggage, the happy memories of wilderness adventures already overshadowed by this new reality. Jessica kept looking between faces, still not fully comprehending the magnitude of what had happened. Tom closed his portfolio with finality. "Gentlemen, our business here is concluded." He turned toward the terminal exit, and I followed, leaving Marcus's group to process their new reality amidst the cheerful chaos of returning travelers and vacation reunions. Behind us, I could hear Marcus's voice calling after us, still trying to negotiate, still unable to accept that some consequences are permanent. But I didn't look back. I'd spent too many years looking backward, making excuses, enabling behavior that should have been stopped long ago. The walk through SeaTac's corridors felt different than it had a week ago. Then I'd dragged my gear through these same halls as a confused, betrayed father. Now I walked beside my attorney as someone who'd reclaimed his dignity through principled action, justice served, lessons learned, future secured. It was finally completely mine.